39 days, 20 castaways, one tribe, and one podcast. This is Essential Fans versus Fans. I'm your host, Jessica, originally from Season 7, Anarchy, followed by my co-host, Jack, who played in Season 4, Japan, and is a member of the executive hosting team.
Yo, what's good?
And I'd also like to officially introduce our newest co-host, Alex, who is a spectacular spectator and is now a member of the podcast hosting team.
Heyo.
All right. So it's been a couple weeks since we've done this podcast, as there's been a lot of things happening. The game got a little slower there for a little while, but now it's picked back up. So last podcast, we left off with Allison being voted out and the merge just starting. So we're going to go over the episodes that we've seen and kind of talk about some of the things that have happened and go from there. So first off, the merge happened at 13 with 8 fans and 5 favorites. In your opinion, how impactful was the joint tribal that happened a couple rounds earlier? Like, do you think that the connections that were made during the joint tribal made it easier or harder for people to be willing to cross tribal line? Alex, do you have an opinion on that?
I think for some of the castaways, it helped. But for others, I think they were, talking to a brick wall. I don't think that there was as many connections. I think maybe like 2 or 4 connections occurred during that pre-tribal or that joint tribal.
So you don't think that the joint tribal really had much of an impact on what happened at the merge, in the merge tribal?
I don't, no, not really. Because it wasn't as juicy as we wanted it to be, I don't think.
I mean, it was the joint tribal or the merge tribal?
The merge tribal.
The merge tribal. Okay. I see what you're saying. What about you, Jack? What do you think? Do you think the joint tribal had any impact?
I think it definitely had an impact on people's perception of how the rest of the game was going to go down. Because a favorite leaving, I think, definitely lowered morale some places and raised it others. But as we see in the merge tribal, it doesn't really impact the outcome of it.
And that's kind of like the perfect segue into the next question I have. So we end up losing Carmen, who is on the fan side of the tribal lines. Now, do you think, because we lost Carmen in a 9-4, so half the fans flipped to vote with the faves on this tribal. So was this just a compromise by the fans to show that they were willing to work with the faves? Or do you think that they just wanted to get Carmen out? Jack?
Well, no offense to Carmen, but I didn't really see them as a huge threat. So I think it was kind of basically they didn't really trust Carmen all that much. And especially people thought they had a connection with Jalen as a duo. So I think it was a little bit of both, of getting rid of a duo and showing, like Kristen, for example, showing that, and Matthew, that they want to work with the faves and not fully against them.
All right. Do you have anything to add to that, Alex?
I would agree with that. And to the point before is for sure the joint tribal kind of showed the favorites that the fans were really tight, like really, really tight. And there was no kind of breaking that. And so that influenced the vote on Carmen, I believe. The rest of the faves just figured that they're going to have to cut ties with one. And it was that vote that helped certain favorites get aligned with some of the fans in order to move forward.
I just think that Carmen was unfortunately just dispensable for the fans. Like, to see, and it was also interesting to see a fan go whenever they had such the majority, but I think it opened up opportunities with the favorites to show that, look, we'll let go of one of our own. But we see that we're going to need to work together here. And I, for one, as a viewer of this, appreciate that, because that means we're not going to get a Pagani, which honestly I was scared was going to happen. I thought the fans could have easily just, taken out the faves one by one, and we would be left with, 7 or 8 fans. So As a fan, I'm happy for that.
I don't know if that would have happened. I think Mark was willing to flip at the moment's notice. He didn't want the Pagonging either. And so if Carmen wasn't going to go, he was going to flip solely, like completely over to the Faves.
So I got one more question about like this merge tribal and what kind of happened. There was one thing that really kind of stood out, and a lot of people may not have realized this at the time, but Carmen's vote out really sets off Jalen. Like, he was not happy about Carmen being voted out and the blind side that happened. So do you think that this was kind of like the beginning of the end for him, Jack?
I mean, let's be honest. There was really nothing to end to start with because his game was kind of non-existent. But it was nice to see him, come alive after that. But it didn't really amount to anything. So I think that blow up kind of just like gave him a reason to vote him off because I really thought he was gonna, be dragged to final council.
Alex, did you notice anything with Jalen that was off-putting after the Carmen vote out?
Well, one thing I'm still getting used to with these types of orgs is how passionate some of these players are and how personally they take. They take these vote outs so personally. I got enough friends in real life, and if one of my colleagues in a tribe gets voted out, it's like, okay, I probably wasn't going to talk to you anyway in a month, but you move on from that. And how passionate some of these how some of these players take these votes. It's like, who cares? It was your best friend. Was it your real best friend, or was it like a Discord best friend?
Yeah, I mean, I think they did mention, or like Mark deduced that they like live in the same city, go to the same college and stuff. And we never really see Carmen or Jalen speak about that, but his reaction really made me think that they know each other well. And I think it was also like he was blindsided by it and Cole because he wasn't really talking to anyone. So it was kind of like, oh, he lost his friends. Oh, a majority of the tribe blindsided him. And it was just kind of like it shook his game up from thought he was something cute.
See, I think people need to understand that a blindside is always like everybody gets blindsided in these games, whether it's you getting voted out or your best, number one getting voted out. But it's how you react to those situations that make or break your game. And I can understand that you're upset, but at the same time, blowing up and just like the DMs that he was having with people, he destroyed his own game. Not that there was much of one there, but he didn't give himself a chance to be able to rebound from that, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was bad.
So that is the merge boot. That's Carmen becomes the first member of our jury, which is, hasn't happened in Essential for a couple seasons where we're going to have a bigger jury. But moving on to Final 12. Cole wins immunity for a second time in a row. So he won immunity for the first try, or the merge challenge, and now he wins it again. So starting off this episode, how dangerous is it for Cole to win his second immunity in a row? We've seen this be an issue in past seasons where someone like Allison from season 7 made herself a big threat because of her immunity wins. Is this the same thing starting to happen with Cole here? What do you think, Alex?
I think he was already a threat, and it was a matter of winning to stay alive. And so, he knew that he almost pretty much had to win it out or win until he was part of majority. So I don't think that affected his game as far as winning the immunity. He was already a threat.
What about you, Jack? You've got a little bit more knowledge when it comes to the rebound effects of winning multiple immunities. What do you think is going on with Cole here?
Yes, thanks for the call out. But I don't know. I felt like Cole at the start, he was a little inactive, maybe not in DMs as much, but I felt like he didn't really need the first two immunities. And by winning them, it just like solidified his threat level. Like if I was a player and I saw Cole and he was performing okay in challenges publicly, I was like, oh, okay, like he's not a huge threat physically. But then you immediately merge, you win 2 in a row, and then you also find out that Yegg is a thing. It just kind of paints him as a like immunity threat, like a a social threat, and it just wasn't good. I really thought he could slide by at first, but then the double immunity wins, it just sealed his fate. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that the target may have already been there, but I think with those immunity wins, it really solidified him as this big threat and somebody that needed to go sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
Arya is still in the game.
Yeah, but she's not as threatening. Yeah, she may have the ability to win challenges, but people see her as, I mean, her social bonds aren't there. She's not in a majority. She doesn't have a group that people are knowing about. So she just didn't have the standing that Cole did, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, I mean, Arya just got like to jump a little. Arya is not in a good social position, so um, they're gonna do it eventually. But I think they're prioritizing who to get rid of right now.
Which is smart.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, Cole was a great player, I think, and his video confessionals showed that he knew what he like. He intentionally voted for oh God, who was it? Sorry.
Arya,
Um,
wasn't it?
yeah, it was Arya. He intentionally voted for Arya, which I thought was a really good move because he made it public too, like to like separate himself. But I mean, the 2 immunity wins, the Yegg thing. He wasn't the most social out of Yegg, and it just wasn't. It wasn't uh, a good storyline for him at the end of the day.
I think it just increased his time, or I guess the accelerated his time before going to
Yeah.
Ponderosa. So now we're down to 7 fans and 5 favorites. Based off last Tribal, it would appear that tribal lines are beginning to dissolve. At this point in the game, do you think that that is true? Are people no longer playing by the fans versus favorites tribal lines? Jack?
Yeah, I really think that it's dissolving for quite a few people. I would say most notably is the pre-existing relationship with Brittany and Matthew, and then John and Kristen. I think those four really work together to dissolve any notions of it's just gonna be fans versus favorites, but now it's like people versus people and not grouped together by that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I think so too. And it's nice to see that they're dissolving into this one big melting pot of chaos. I'm all for it. As we know, I'm against begongings. And, just to be able to see that that's actually not going to be the case as a fan and someone who's enjoying the season, that makes me happy. So now we're going to get into the vote for the final 12. Bradley has convinced himself that he is in a really great position and is the one pulling the strings in the game. But people are kind of over it, and they see that it's a great time to show him that, maybe he's not in such a great position. In a pretty unanimous vote of 8-3, Bradley is voted out 12th, beating his previous placement by only 1. Similarly to Carm, do you think that the fans were just wanting to get rid of Bradley, or do you think it was more of them trying to open up opportunities to work with the fans going forward? I'm going to give it to Jack again.
I mean, I think Bradley's, I almost said eviction, Bradley's vote off was mostly his own fault. He was overplaying, and even his own allies wanted to vote him off, and it just wasn't handled well on his end. So, I mean, I think it was definitely like, I think it was definitely some of it, but it was just people didn't trust him, not as much. The faves wanted to work with the fans. I don't know.
Yeah, I
What do
agree
you
with that. His own tribe mates were getting annoyed with him, and it wasn't a hard sell for the other tribe to convince anyone to vote Bradley out. It was a pretty easy vote, really, behind the scenes, just because he was just annoying people.
Poor Bradley. I really do. I really do love the kid, but he's a lot when it comes to orgs. He's got a very, very big personality, and it shows when he talks to people. So hopefully he'll learn from this, his 13th and 12th placements in Essential, and be able to figure it out. But we do see him go here. It's really sad, but at the same time,
But is it?
well, a little bit. So that wraps up the final 12. On to final 11. Arya wins immunity. That means Cole is no longer the one that's holding the immunity necklace. You would think that comes into play. It does come into play a little bit down the road, but at this point, Yegg is a known group, and things are starting to look a little bleak for them. Kip becomes the first Yegg to really be targeted, but the push for Bradley was too strong. In your opinion, was there anything that Cole, Kip, or Kristen could have done to save themselves after they got found out? Alex, I'm going to let you take this one.
Oh, gee, thanks. I think they should have separated from each other at that point. I think either Cole and Kristen should have broke off and led the push towards Kip, or Kip and Kristen should have pushed off and gone against Cole. The three were not making it the three were not making it any further together. We see one person standing now, but I think there could have easily been two people standing if they had turned on each other. And from what we could read, there was, that was already in the works to happen. They should have done it this vote and been united, than let it happen around them.
Yeah, I think it would have been wise to flip on each other, because they even were talking in their chat how like they knew it was kind of over. But I mean, they also had the idol, and we saw them exchange the extra vote advantage from Kristen because they thought she was a target, and they could have all survived that round, and then they would have made it to the demerge, where probably two of them would have gone, but it was just mishandled. They definitely cannot play idols or any advantage really correctly, it seems, in this org. But it was preventable for one round, but it was inevitable in the long run. So I think it would have benefited. I really think it should have been Cole and Kristen flipping on Kip, because Kip was a really big presence overall.
Yeah, Kip, and that was the thing and you can see it in Kristen's confessional, is that Kip was a target regardless of any kind of connection, and the blowback from the revealing of this connection really fell more on Mark than it did Tay, and it wasn't, mind you, I don't know what was said in personal DMs, but it wasn't as crazy as I thought it would be when this all kind of came out. Because yes, there are other pre-existing relationships. They just didn't expect it to be on the fans' side. And a solid 3 is deadly, but I think they should have just turned on each other at that point, or like had a group of 2 turn on Kip and lead the vote on that. But yes, I agree. Completely mishandled advantage on this vote. Embarrassing, actually.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. In the long run, Mark kind of, the way he went about it just made it seem not as important and kind of fishy. And I mean, it's Mark, so he's already seems fishy. So I mean, if he had gone and said, there's this group of 3, they all hail from Canada. I'm not going to try to pronounce that place. Sorry.
Edmonton.
They all played the same org, and they all know each other already. Like, that would have had a bigger impact. But instead, he went about it as, oh yeah, these group of 3, they play this org together, maybe different seasons, but they all come from the same place in like, Survivor Online world. So that just didn't seem it didn't seem like the execution was done correctly. So it was just kind of like people were aware, but it wasn't as like a big threat to them, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah, Mark didn't help the situation at all.
When does he?
Very true.
The dude is just fishy all the time.
And yet he's in the final 7, but we'll get there.
Wow.
So after Yeg is found out, their targets escalate tenfold, at least in my opinion. Cole's idol has now become public knowledge as well, and a lot of the faves are already really hesitant of Kip and the presence that he has in the tribe. So the final vote ends up being 5 for Kip, 3 for Cole, and 3 for Tay. Cole plays his idol on himself as his name has been floating around, but is falling right into the plan of flushing out the idol. The Yeg 3 of Kristen, Cole, and Kip all vote for Tay, so they're sticking together, even though they know that they're found out. Brittany, John, and Matt all vote for Cole, and the other 5 vote for Kip. So how much of an impact did the Yeg 3 getting found out have on the season? Do you think it changed the course of the season or even the possible outcome of the season? Jack?
I mean, I think it definitely sped it up, but we saw that I think Kristen and Cole were a lot closer to each other than they were with Kip. They discussed stuff together and didn't bring to Kip like other alliances. So I think it would have definitely happened, and maybe not as quick, like back to back kind of. But it was. I always saw Kristen as the last one standing, and it so happens to that's how it worked out. But yeah, when Cole played his idol on Kristen because they heard Kip and Cole, they thought it was a fake. It just wasn't meant to be, I guess. But it was doomed from the start. So
Thank you for correcting me, Jack. Yes, it was played on Kristen, not on Cole. But I'm curious on what Alex thinks of this because Alex was extremely, pro Yeg, especially at the beginning of the game, saying that they weren't going to go to any more tribals because Kip is like challenge beast and all of this stuff. So what do you think? Do you think that them 3 getting found out is actually going to change the ending of the season?
No, I don't think so. I think as much as I have got Cole in my draft, and my draft is all that matters actually, not Soul Survivor.
don't mind it.
And so I'm disappointed. But if you also note, I don't name any other Yag in there because I figured that Cole was going to play this behind the scenes gameplay and then kind of start winning after merge. But Kip should have been voted out before. This is the part that's very frustrating, is that he was in every single fans alliance. There was 12 of them, and he was in every single one of them. And the other fans just don't talk to each other. It's just kind of crazy how that didn't get found out. And Kip being on his own should have got him voted out early. And so the fact that he didn't get voted out and he was making it further just added confidence to him and also confidence to the Yag 3. Them finding out, I think Kip still goes to the same point, regardless of anyone finding out anything. And if we go along with that, Kip getting voted out, Cole winning immunities, he becomes a threat on its own. It was going to be inevitable. I don't think the reveal had any influence on where they would have been regardless. Unless if Kip played in a completely different style of game, if he played like his actual self that I know him as, he would have made it further.
Yeah, but Essential for some reason loves the arrogant gameplay. So he he himself was a big storyline of the season, even though he got 11th. Kip is somebody that has a lot of if this was actual Survivor, he would have a lot of confessional time, a lot of screen time, just because of his the way he brought himself out to be. So I agree. I think. Go ahead.
Need to get him and Neil on the same tribe somehow.
Oh Lord.
No.
And then Allison too.
I think personality really does a big part of your presence in these kind of places. Like Neil last season got 18th, and people mention him on the daily. and I think Kip is going to be talked about for a while too because he was a great player and he was a great personality, and that combination is just golden for us.
Yeah, I played on the same tribe as Kip, and we never won a lot
Sorry for you.
challenges. We would come in second a lot in a lot of challenges or lose a challenge, but we never won. And I don't know where this comp beast came from.
Well, unfortunately, we have lost our second YEG member, or I'm sorry, our first YEG member in Kip. He goes at Final 11, and we're going to see some more repercussions of that at Final 10. But Final 10 is where things get really interesting. So, Final 10, we get the demerge. So, let's talk about this controversial twist. So, the fans tribe and the favorites tribe were intact for the entire pre-merge. There were no swaps. The only time that they met before the merge was at the joint tribal at Final 16, where we lost Will. With the merge at Final 13, they have voted out 3 people as a merged tribe. At Final 10, the demerged twist comes into play, splitting the 10 remaining players into 2 tribes of 5 for 1 vote. So, let's have a conversation about this twist, because personally, and I have let it be known, I am not a fan of this twist. But what are your thoughts on it, Alex?
I think you're the only one that's not a fan of it. I didn't know that it was controversial. I thought it was awesome.
Well, I made it controversial. So, what do you like about this twist? To you, what did it bring to the game?
Well, in Real Survivor, after they merge, they do a reward challenge. A lot of times they split up the tribes, and one team wins reward. So it's not like it's completely unheard of. It just the difference is that this was an immunity challenge. It helped speed the game along. We needed something like this because it was getting very slow, and so to kind of boot out 2 people pretty quickly was good. And spinning the wheel, that was, I'm glad that the screenshots were shown, because it could have looked, an outsider looking in and be like, oh, CK just broke up YEG just on purpose to put them on 2 separate tribes so they can both get voted out. But that wasn't the case. So I think it was good. It made it spicy, made it fun to watch.
What about you, Jack? Do you agree?
Full disclosure, we use the wheel for any tribe swap, anything like that. So no shenanigans are known. But I mean, I like the twist for like the reason of just showing how you can adapt and change your gameplay to fit the situation you're in. And that's why I personally enjoy it for that reason, because you never know, they always say in Big Brother, expect the unexpected. And that's what you're here to do. You're supposed to play the game, and you don't know the game. You think you know the game, but I enjoy it for that. But it also sucks on the end of being quote unquote twist screwed, because that's happened to me. But I mean, at the same time, it's the game. So you really can't. Yeah, I mean.
So here's my issue with it, and I've said this before. I'm part of a hosting team for another org, and when this idea was brought up by my co-host, I shot it down immediately, because I've played through a demerge before, and my thinking is, you work so hard to get to the merge. Like, that is, if you ask anybody, their first 2 goals of any game are, 1, not to be the first boot, and 2, to make it to the merge. So you work so hard to make it to the merge, and then the game essentially screws you in the sense of everything that you've worked for, the people that you've connected with, how far you've made it is basically ripped from you, and you're having to do something completely new for an entire round. I don't have an issue with people screwing people over in games, because that's expected. But when the game comes in with a twist that can screw you over, that's where I'm like, all right, I'm not a fan of this. Any thoughts on where I'm coming from?
Yeah, I understand. I totally understand where you're coming from, and being on both ends, it's understandable. But at the same time, it's sometimes it's just funny to watch. I don't know.
Oh, exactly. it's fun to watch, and like you said earlier, Jack, it's adapting to what comes around. Another alternative is to not merge until there's a final 8 or 6.
They did that last season.
I think
Now
that's
we merged at 11.
yeah, you merged at 11, and then you had a jury of 5, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
Um, but if you merge smaller, it'd be the same kind of thing. If you want to make it to the merge, okay, well, then you got to be top 6, top 8. You got to survive one demerge. That's no big deal. Surviving one demerge. It's surviving that. If they were to stay like that for a second vote, then that would be tough. But again, it's all about, at that point they had been merged already and building those connections that you have.
Okay, I can respect that, and I see where you're both coming from. I just wanted to kind of push why I was against it, but I do agree that it was entertaining. A little, once we saw the tribes, and we'll get to that in a second, a little expected once we did see what the tribes were. But it did bring an entertainment factor that the game needed.
Yeah, I mean, outwit and outplay. That's two of the parts. You gotta outwit the game. Gotta play the game. That's just how the cookie crumbles, I guess.
All right, so moving on to the 2 tribes that were separate with this demerge. So tribe 1, we have Arya, Matthew, Cole, Brittany, and Mark. And then on tribe 2, we have Kristen, John, Jayla, Tay, and Despair. So once the merged tribes were separated into their demerged tribes, there was an individual immunity challenge where the top of each tribe were immune. Arya and John both won this crucial immunity, and we see Jalen go as the 10th person voted out of this game and the 3rd member of the jury in a beautiful 3-2-1, with Tay once again getting a couple votes and Kristen getting a 1 vote. Immediately after, we see Cole get voted out 9th in a 3-2 vote. Jack, do you think either Jalen or Cole would have been the next vote if the demerge didn't happen?
I do. I think Cole definitely would have taken a lot of heat, and he probably would have been the vote, in my opinion. Jalen is a different story because they have been blowing up and getting mad at people. But I mean, on that tribe, you have Kristen and John who have gotten close to each other. Despair is confused at Jalen, and Tay is just kind of being Tay and shady and not sure where he lies. So I thought Tay was gonna be the vote at first, but when it turned to Jalen, I was trying to please because I'm a big believer in if you don't deserve to be there, you should just leave. And no offense, but yeah, I don't know.
What about you, Cole? Do you think that the demerge twist either accelerated or just unfairly took out either of Jalen or Cole?
Well, if they didn't have this demerge, I think Cole would have had more time to plot and to secure some relationships. He was on the list for sure, and so was Jalen. But I don't know. I think Jalen may have gone there, but it would have been close with Cole too. But I think Cole would have done a little bit better of securing the situation.
I think that both Cole and Jalen were not necessarily on the very bottom, but they were people who easily could have gotten votes in like a split scenario. So I don't think the demerge actually did screw anybody completely out of a good position in the game. So I'm okay with it for this season. I think it was fair. Nothing major happened with the demerge. So after a double elimination, it's always, really nerve-wracking to quickly go from a final 10 to a final 8 in one round. So we're really starting to see the lines and, where people fit within the tribe. So I want to have some fun. I'm going to give a series of questions, and I want each of you to give me the castaway that best fits that role at the final 8. Let's call this production touchy subject, shall we? I'm going to have
That are
Jack
still in
go
the game?
first. Final 8, so before last round. So I'm going to have Jack go first, give his castaway and his thoughts, and then I'm going to have Alex follow, and then I'll give my opinions before we move on. So the first one, there's only 5 of them. So the first one, in your opinion, who left is being goated? Jack?
That's hard. Because I want to say, from my point of view, Mark should be goated, but I feel like Brittany is also going to be goated with Matthew. The Spares, they seem like they could be a goat, and so could Arya. It just, there's not a whole lot of contenders at Final 8, so I'll go with Mark, I guess.
But one moment, Alex, before you step in. So the final 8 that we're discussing right now is Arya, Brittany, John, Matthew, Kristen, Despair, Mark, and Tay. So go ahead.
Yep.
Alex.
We're including Tay in this?
Yes, because he's in the final 8. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I agree that there's not one huge contender right now. They all could end up being goated, but I think Kristen is being goated. And Despair, we'll see what happens with this Brittany win. But yeah, Mark is a hard one because like we see how he plays and it's just so annoying, and we just want the other players to see it too. He's not the player that he thinks he is, and I'm not quite sure if the other castaways see that. Not yet. I think John is close to figuring that out, but right now I think Kristen is goated. She's a loyal person, so she'll just follow with someone down there. But I think if she makes it to the final 3, then she'll get 2 votes. That's it. But I don't think she'll win.
Yeah, that's fair. Other people have commented that she's kind of dry too. So I mean,
and she uses your point.
Yeah. That's her
I agree with all 3 of those, being Mark, Brittany in a sense, and Kristen. All 3 of them, as we'll see in the next episode, are completely content giving the main contender left in the game immunity without any issues whatsoever. It's like they're not playing for themselves, especially Kristen and Brittany. They're playing for Matthew, seemingly, at this point in the game, which is unbelievable because we're at final 8. It's time to start making those moves to build your resume, and they're not doing that. So
I can give you exactly who gave Matthew immunity.
We'll discuss that in the next.
Yeah, I got you.
Segment. So yes, I agree with all 3 of those, and it's kind of sad that we have 3 pretty clear people being goated at the final 8. Hopefully things will start picking up. But so the next one, who is most likely to make it to the end but not win? Jack?
I'm gonna go with Brittany. I don't see her being voted out here in the future, and I see her just getting the final and just maybe getting a few votes, but not all of them. I just don't see her winning this.
Alex?
I'll agree with Brittany or Despair, actually. They'll go and not even get a vote in final. Neither one of them will even get votes in the final tribal.
Yeah. Brittany makes me nervous because she had the same experience with Orcs at War, where she had a really, really strong contender as her number 1. They did play the game together, but when you actually go to final tribal council and having to explain your own game apart from them when they make it as well, it's just really hard to do. And I can say that from experience. So Brittany, I can see her making the final, especially after she did just win immunity and guarantee herself a spot in the final 6. But I don't know if she's going to have enough of a resume to impress the jury to vote for her.
Yeah. And people have already, in the jury, for a sneak peek, have already commented on how the Brittany they saw in season 7 is not the same that they've seen here, which is kind of sad to think about. But
As a season 7 person, I can completely agree with that.
Yeah.
So next question: Who do you think, or who thinks that they are controlling this game? And then a two-part to this question: Who is actually controlling this game? Jack?
sorry, that question just made me laugh. I think clearly, Mark really thinks he's in the driver's seat here. He thinks he's managing all these alliances so well, and he's flipping and flopping actually. Um, so I think he's in for a bad shock when he goes back to the viewing lounge, because he's just delusional at this point. And who's actually controlling the game? Matthew, of course. Uh, there's no other answer for that. For these last few rounds, basically his predicted boot list that he wanted has pretty much gone off flawlessly. Like he said Carmen and Bradley at like the second they merged, and who went out? Carmen and Bradley. So I think he has his control over the tribe, and multiple people want him in the final two as well.
I agree 100% with exactly what you've said there. Mark thinks he's playing or running this game, and he's really not. The good thing there is that John is sniffing that out, and so it'll be well known pretty quickly. And then for sure, Matthew's playing it right. He's making it look like Brittany's making some decisions, but they're actually his decisions. He's swaying his alliance members. It's very easy to see that Matthew's running the game.
I'm going to agree that Mark also thinks that he's in control, but I'm also going to rope in Despair with that. I think Despair thinks that they also have a lot of pull and a lot of things are under their control when that's not necessarily the case. Obviously, Matthew is in control of his game. And the thing is most of the castaways can see that as well, but none of them are really doing anything about it. They're basically just handing him, this game on a silver platter at this point. But yeah, Matthew is clearly in control, and it's impressive to see how he was able to get so much control so like early in the merge. So
I mean, there's an argument against Despair because they were well aware of a 3-2-1 that was happening in the split or the demerge. So I think they have all the knowledge that they need. I just want to see them use it. Like their confessionals have picked up, their like strategical sense has. So I'm not sure. I think they could do it. And Matthew is 3 people's number 1 on trust rankings. So that should, in a final 7, that should speak volumes, to be honest.
but wasn't Despair completely thrown off by the Tay vote? That will happen next round.
Yeah, that's also true.
Now there was an advantage played given that, but I just think that
Yeah, I would have tied otherwise. So I get your point, though.
so next one. A lot of these sound similar, but I promise they're not. I was thinking of touchy subject questions that we've all had to answer before. And I was like, let's do this for the castaways left in the game. So who has no idea what is going on?
I mean, it's the same answer.
Still Mark?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Mark.
He's gonna have a rude awakening when he gets out of this game. And I hate it for him because he's such a great spectator, has been a great part of this community for so long. But there's a difference between being, arrogant and, actually playing the game and knowing what's going on. And then there's a different thing of being almost arrogant and just being completely out of the loop. And that's kind of what he has been almost this entire game. It's gotten worse since the merge.
Yeah.
But
I mean, literally, like in different orgs, whenever I like do a move, like one time I did like a 3-2-2-1, and I was like, I really hope that was my move because I don't want to sound delusional in front of everybody. Like that's always my worry, that because you don't know, like you might think that this was your idea, but it could be someone planted that seed in your head 2 rounds earlier and was pushing you to do it. So it's hard to tell while you're in the game.
And we've seen that with Matthew, with other people. I think he's done it with Kristen and Brittany, planning ideas that they think they're kind of coming up with.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew is on the top of Mark's trust list, Brittany's trust list, and I think it's Kristen too. Yeah. So he's playing essentially most of the tribe. And with Kristen usually comes John. So, I mean.
And I have it written down, so I'm going to ask it, even though I'm pretty sure we will all be in agreement with this, but who is most likely to win? Now, there's an argument, and we'll get to that a little bit in the next segment, for Matthew to maybe not win because of his threat level, but in your opinion, who is the most likely to win?
Matthew.
Yeah, I'd say Matthew. I still think Kristen could pull something out. If she gets there, she may be able to sway more than just 2 votes.
Yeah. I would say right now it's Matthew.
Yeah, for sure, Matthew.
John, Kristen.
John's a strong contender. John, he's not at the forefront because he has Matthew, and I think that's actually going to work in his favor. If he can get Matthew out of this game, John has a very good shot of winning, in my opinion.
I think John would be, if the next blindside would be John. I don't think there would be a big blindside other than John getting voted out.
Yeah, I mean, it's not looking good for John really in the long run, because right now, Kristen trusts Matthew more, Brittany trusts Matthew more, Mark trusts Matthew more, and that's 4 against 3. And of course, there's the idol, and that would be really interesting to see an idol play this tribal, because there's 7 of them. But and they could just say, let's do this bear Arya this round, and John's gonna be fine with that. So he's gonna idol one of them out, maybe, if he even does. I don't see him making it to final tribal council unless he wises up fast.
And idols out Matthew. Wouldn't that be interesting?
Yeah, and by fast I mean this very tribal. After that, it's kind of the point of no return.
So that was my touchy subjects. Thank you for playing. It was a lot of fun. Thankfully, we were in agreement for most of it. So moving on to Final 8. So Matthew gets immune, and we're going to talk a little bit about that immunity challenge. But after an eventful double elimination episode, we're down to the Final 8. The challenge at Final 8 is simple yet potentially deadly, in the sense that each castaway ranks who they want to win immunity 1 through 7. Easy, right? Well, one person stands out decisively as the front runner with an average placement of 2.7. Matthew had 4 people put him as number 1 on this list. That's literally half the remaining players. Do you think that this is a telling sign that Matthew is in the best position in the game? Or is it just that they wanted to make sure that somebody else like A or Arya or Tay didn't win immunity? Jack?
I think if I was in this game, that would have been a huge, oh fuck, that's not good. But I don't really think everyone's kind of looking at it as, other people ranked him high, but he ranked me higher than them. He's my number 1, not theirs. So it just kind of, I think everyone's a little deluded about where they stand with Matthew and who his true allegiance is actually to, because you can't be loyal to every single person, and you can't all make final tribal council together. So I just think they're all convincing themselves otherwise, sadly.
Yeah, you said it exactly right there. I think the 4 people that ranked him number 1 are delusional, just thinking, well, I ranked him number 1, so of course he won. He won this challenge. But those 4 people need to talk to each other and say, who did you vote, or who did you put as your number 1? That's the crazy part. And the fact that because wasn't the point of this game is who do you want to win immunity?
Yes.
And so everyone wanted Matthew to win immunity, which is like messed up.
Yeah.
Well,
I
and
mean,
the crazy thing is he was he was ranked number 7 by 2 people. So
6 and
and
7.
still,
Yeah, 6 and 7. They're the only ones that kind of put it together, saying, "Huh, put him 7th, and he still won."
mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a ranking Big Brother where like every HOH was this where you rank people, and it was very telling. Like a lot of times, if you won HOH, you were out next round because people were willing to give it to you. So there was a point where we decided, let's give it to people who we trust but are expendable. So I think also a lot of people were just they didn't think Matthew was going to be a target, so they were okay with giving it to him. But he actually had Mark first as number 1 on his list, and he changed it to Brittany later on, and that was really interesting to see because uh, I kind of just assumed Brittany was going to be his number 1 the whole entire time, and that just kind of showed me a side of him that maybe he doesn't like want her all the way, or doesn't want her to be winning immunity.
Got sucked in by Mark for a couple of hours.
Oh, it was also interesting because the tribal discussion that happened later that episode, Matt was, he was getting called out by Tay. Tay's being like, "Look, Matthew's running the game. He's like in this great spot, and just kind of letting him." And Matthew, his rebuttal was, "No, maybe they just didn't want somebody else to win immunity type thing." And that was just an interesting thought. That if that's to me, that's the strategy of this kind of challenge to have the control over who doesn't win immunity. I don't think that's the case because, like you said, they're all brainwashed and just following Matthew and not really putting up much of a fight against him. But I thought it was an interesting rebuttal.
No, yeah, that was a beautiful response. That it shows the jury that there's strategical thinking behind it, and people are okay with him winning immunity, and it kind of just moves it away from people just like him a lot to people dislike someone else more. So it was a beautiful answer in my opinion, and I'm not sure if a jury really caught on to it, but I hope that they realize what's happening there.
Well, moving on. So this is going to be for Alex. I want him to answer this one first. So Kristen is the last remaining Yegg in the game. She has found a new partner in Matt, and she seems to be in a pretty good spot. Do you think that losing Cole and Kip bettered her game and allowed her to ride with Matt to the end?
Yes, it did. If anything, it's going to allow her bragging rights, really, that she doesn't need Cole or Cole's twin brother Keegan to play this game. Because she's played she's played in the Yegg org with those two brothers very far, and so if she can go further with someone else, I think it'll do well for her. I think she has a good thing going with Matthew and also John to a degree. Like if Brittany goes early, I think John and Kristen can kind of pair up pretty hard. So it's good for Kristen.
Jack, do you have anything to add?
It was an interesting word to use, partner, there, because I think it's a little more one-sided, but it gives her a good storyline because a lot of, like myself as a juror, a storyline kind of helps it weave their gameplay together. So as the last Yegg standing, she got all this flack and like for being a part of it, and then she loses the 2 people and finds all these new bonds, and that's the great story. And then I don't know, I just don't see her really winning unless it's against Arya and Despair in the end. And
I agree. But I do think that I think that losing Cole and Kip so early in the merge game did help better her personal game. But
yeah,
she's still doing the same exact thing in the sense where she latched on to Cole and Kip. And then when they were gone, she latched on to Matthew. So she's going to have a really hard time at the end, if she makes it there, being able to differentiate her game from the people that she's been latched onto. So. All right. So one more thing about Final 8. It's about our buddy Mark. So we're starting to see a little life in Mark as he tries to plot against John and make a move. His mistake, though, was telling the plan to Kristen, who is currently working with John. And John gets wind of this and correctly plays his steal a vote advantage to steal Mark's vote and stops a tie from occurring between John and Tay. We see Tay leave in a 5-3 and become the 6th member of our jury. Do you think this foursome of Matthew, Brittany, John, and Kristen that are currently seem to be at the top of the tribe, do you think that this foursome will falter, or do you think that they're going to be the final 4? Jack?
I'm not sure entirely. It depends on how this next round plays out, I think. But I think Matthew really knows what's kind of up with the tribe, and it depends if he wants John to continue with that foursome, and he's not going to vote out Mark, and he's going to go against Mark being voted out. So Arya, Despair, and John are his only options, really, that he wants out. So I doubt it, to be honest, that those 4 will be the final 4. It would be a cool final 4, I guess, because 2 duos going against each other in the end. But it's not really even a duo at that point because Kristen trusts Matt more. So there has to be some kind of rude awakening for her, I think, for it to really happen. Yeah.
Alex?
This is the formation alliance, right? You just said? Like Matt, Kristen, John, and Brittany?
Brittany. Yeah.
Baddies. That's the one where you swap Kristen out for Mark. Okay,
Yeah.
so at that point, and really at that, and if it gets down to there, I think we'll be able to sniff out the Matthew Mark relationship and be able to just get Mark out without even being Matt and still keeping that foursome in the final 4. So I do see this foursome going all the way.
And plus, yeah.
And he'll see and off of those 4.
Has Matt been to a final 4 that you guys know of?
Yeah, I've never
Because
met
I
him.
know that John and Kristen final speech. They're probably, and I assume Brittany would do really well at that too. But I think at that point he's gonna have his jury management may not be the best at that point. Depends on how things go.
Well, I like this thought, that process that you're on, Alex, because it is very true that a final tribal council performance can make or break your game. Just because you have a good game doesn't mean you get the win if you can't explain how you did it. So that's a very good point. And he would be going up against John, who is very strong. He had a great performance in Survivor, going up against Brittany, who also had a decent final tribal council in Orgs at War. And then Kristen, I'm not too sure how she does, but I think that's a fair point to make.
Yeah. I mean,
As a
in Orgs at War,
Sorry, go ahead.
in Orgs at War, it was kind of, she was the lesser of the evil. And I'm not sure about Survivor, but I just looked, and Matthew said he's won Hellvivor 8-0-0, and then he won Heroes vs. Villains season 6-4-0. So I believe he has won and made it to Tribal Council, Final Tribal
Okay.
Council.
Yeah,
Still doesn't mean he gets the win.
I agree. And with 3 people, I see there very well, or there's a very good chance that one of those people will talk themselves out of votes and end up with a 0 count at the end of it. It does come down to that final speech and how you answer questions.
Well, and it also goes with how you play to the jury. Like, I mean, you voted these people out, and now you're asking them for your vote. So how do you go about doing that? And I think I mean, I'm relatively new to orgs, and I've been doing it less than a year. But in most final tribal councils I've been a part of or seen, these finalists lose votes all the time or gain votes all the time. So it's just about how you're able to read each juror and the situation connected to that juror, and if you're able to like differentiate one from another and answer them personally, it could gain you votes. If you don't do that, you could lose their vote. So it's all up in the air.
And, I don't know Kip or Cole personally. I just know them through Discord. So I can't say whether or not their votes are, for sure on Kristen if she makes it there. I do know that it is also about ego, this game. And, do they want someone from their home org to win? I don't know. So I couldn't say whether or not Kristen has a guarantee 2 votes from Kip and Cole.
I don't
And
think
this is
so.
all assuming if she makes it.
Yeah.
I mean, she's on the right path, but go ahead, Jack.
I think she gets dragged there.
Yeah. Just watching Kip and Cole play, especially Cole's video confessionals, because not gonna lie, I kind of ignored Kip's a lot because of his arrogance and ranting. But Cole's video confessionals, I think he enjoys the game, he plays the game, he respects the game. So I think at the end of the day, if he sees someone else playing better, he's gonna vote for them to win. I don't think that they're just gonna, oh, Kristen's there, let's just vote her. I doubt it.
I agree.
I would hope not. I mean, that's essentially the opposite of meta targeting, where you're voting someone to win just because you know them, not based off of individual games. So I would hope that wouldn't be the case with this season. So now we're at the final 7. We started out with 20 people, and now we're down to Aria, Brittany, John, Matthew, Kristen, Despair, and Mark. I think we can all agree that Matthew has the most control in the game right now and is looking like the biggest contender. We have also seen that some of the other castaways have noticed this as well. However, there's a big difference in knowing something and actually doing something about it. Do you think that anyone at all will try and go after Matthew? Or do you think that they'll just let him keep marching his way to the finals? Jack?
I honestly think that they're gonna lay down and let him walk over them right to their target this round is already Aria or Despair. So that gets rid of one of the people who didn't want him to win immunity. And I just don't really see it happening. I'm gonna guess at final 5 they're gonna flip on John or Kristen, probably John. And if he played his idol, good for him. But I'm not sure if he'd even go after Matthew there. I don't see really a way Matthew loses this, minus like a huge mess up on his part. Like, kind of on him now.
Alex?
Looking at the personalities left in the game, I don't see the logistics of someone initiating a flip on Matthew. I don't think there's anyone, like, the only ones that would do it right now are Despair or Aria, and they don't have the allies to do it. So let's just say Aria goes in this vote. Even if Despair wins immunity, okay, that's where they have to start turning on each other. So that's where Brittany and Kristen are kind of in trouble at that point. But I don't think anyone left in the game now has the initiative. Oh, I didn't want to say that, but they don't have the cojones to flip the game, flip it on Matt right now.
I think so too. I would love to see a big move just because he's the biggest contender, and just letting the biggest contender have their way and march their way onto final tribal council from final 8 or 9. As a player sounds absurd to me. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think we're going to see him at the end, and it's just like Alex said is going to be in his hands at that point. So I only have one more question for you guys, and then I'll let you go. Thank you for sticking it out for the past hour. But starting with you, Alex, give us your bootless prediction from the final 7 until the final tribal council. Who do you think goes in what order?
All right. So the next vote I see Arya going. Well, if I gotta do this, I also have to guess on who's gonna win the challenges too. But if all
Don't
things are
overthink it.
if things are all equal, it's Arya, Despair. Then at that point, we're down to the 5, and that's where I would say Mark finally goes, Brittany, and then it would be Kristen, John, and Matthew in the final 3, with Matthew winning it and Kristen getting second place.
Interesting take. Jack?
I think 7th place is like, let's just take out challenges and like don't even think about that. Arya's gonna go 5-2. 5-2, and then Despair is gonna go 5-1. And then it depends on if Kristen goes and leaks to Mark, or not Mark, to John, that his name is being thrown out there, because I do think at Final 5, John will be in hot water. So I'm going to say it's going to be a 3-2 on Mark, because I think Matthew's going to Matthew's going to try and make Mark go to Kristen. So then Kristen goes to John and goes, "Hey, Mark just threw out your name," and then they try to idle him out 2-3 technically. That's a very specific prediction, but that's just what I think might happen. And then Final 4, we still don't know. Well, the public still doesn't know if it's going to be vote or fire. But it's going to be the same challenge as always. And I'm going to say Matthew's going to win it, and they're going to vote out. Oh, God, I don't know who they'd vote out. I would say John, if he, of course, plays his title correctly. If it's even a vote.
So
Yeah,
you think
we'll see.
So John will be at 4, and then Brittany, Kristen, and Matthew at final 3?
Yeah, in that order. And I'm going to say we have a 10-person jury. I want to say it's going to be a 9-1-0.
Ooh.
And that one vote, and I'm going to be, if there is to be a stray vote like that, it's going to be Jalen's.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I agree that Arya is probably the next to go, just because she's a bigger challenge threat than Despair. So I think Arya goes next, or at final 7. Then I think Despair goes after Arya does. I think John is going to play his idol at final 5 and idle out. Unfortunately, probably Mark. I would like to see him make a bigger play. I just don't think he'll actually do it. But then he's going to be in trouble if he makes it to final 4, because Matthew's going to know that he's going to be the bigger threat as opposed to Brittany and Kristen. And so I think, regardless of what happens, Matthew's going to do everything he can to get John out of the game, unless John wins that immunity. I think if John makes it to final tribal council, he's got a decent shot of at least getting 3 votes. That may be pushing it. I'm going to go with 3 votes. But if Matthew is in the finals, I think it could be like a 7-3-0, maybe a 7-2-1. I'd really like not to see a 0 vote finalist this season, but it very well could happen. So we shall see. We're at the final 7 now. We will do our next podcast right before final 3, and then we'll do a finale podcast. Yes, Alex.
I have a question. Who's left that could poison the jury?
Despair. I could see Despair going off in the jury house and maybe causing some issues there. I think Mark could. I don't think he has it in him to do it, but I think he could.
I don't know. I've seen Mark. I think he has it in him. I'm just not sure if it's gonna be believable by everyone else.
Because by all three of our accounts, Tay, Jalen, Despair, and Mark are all going to be in the jury together and commiserating. So I wonder if they could cause a ruckus in there.
I see. Like I know Tay, and I think he's gonna hate it, but he is going to he's gonna just like he's gonna realize that it was the game and reward that. I don't know Jalen that well, but I don't really see Jalen. I see Jalen just voting however the fuck he wants to vote, I guess.
Mhm.
I can see that as well. He's a wild card.
Despair. Yeah, Despair. I don't know. They've shown themselves to be a lot more intelligent than they let on with their confessionals. So I'm not sure. I don't think they're gonna go to the jury house and try to convince people to vote the wrong way. I do think Mark might be, especially if Matthew's the one to backstab him. You definitely see him going, oh my God, I trusted Matthew this whole time. He's a snake, blah, blah, blah. But I'm not sure if anyone's going to believe that or listen.
I don't think we're going to have a bitter jury this season at all. Even Bradley, who, was quote unquote full of himself while he was in the game, I don't see him voting a certain way just in spite of that. So I just don't see us having a bitter jury. I think everybody kind of respects the people who were in the game enough not to let personal feelings get in the way of jury votes.
Yeah. I'm going to stick with my normal now.
I'm curious to see what happens if Arya goes here and then if Despair wins the next challenge.
That could be fun.
That'll be some good watching.
That would spell trouble for John. A round early, I think. Yeah.
All right. Well, we covered a lot today. And like I said, our next podcast is going to be before the finals start. And then we're going to do a finale podcast. So be on the lookout for more notifications on when our next podcast is going to be. We're going to keep doing them live. And then I'm going to remember to edit and upload them to the YouTube site so those who aren't here can watch them later. But thank you to both Jack and Alex for joining, and thank you for those who pinged in to listen. And I hope everybody has